Hello, welcome to Generational Ministries. I'm your host, Sandra Fitzgerald, and today's short story is entitled Opportunity Knocks. Hush, shh. Do you hear a faint tapping sound continually echoing on the doors of your mind? Listen at its steady rhythm. You've heard the sound since grade school. That's the sound of opportunity knocking. It has often been assumed that opportunity just happens. This is not true. In this story, we will show you that opportunity, unlike chance, requires effort on everyone that has ever had a dream or vision for a successful life. There are three essential elements to opportunity. They are patience, perception, and preparation. As usual, we will bring some biblical characters to life first, and then use modern-day life application to illustrate our point. So let's put on our spiritual seatbelts and take a trip backwards in time to an ancient city named Jericho. Now, Jericho was on the list for demolition. God had promised Joshua, Moses' replacement, as the leader of the children of Israel, the land on which the city of Jericho sat. In other words, God had promised his people that they would inherit this land. In order to possess the land, and the city of Jericho had to be destroyed. Opportunity is knocking. Here's God wanting to bless the people of Israel with land of their own. But it's not going to just happen. Joshua needed a plan. Now it's time for this three-step deal. First, Joshua had patience. He didn't just rush in Saul's drone and go swinging through the city. That would have been foolish. Instead, Joshua waited for just the right time. Before the army engaged in battle, they had sent out 2 spies to case the city. In other words, to check out the conditions. The 2 men came back with a good report. The waiting had paid off. Now it was preparation time. It was time to get ready to move. Joshua instructed the people to sanctify themselves. The priests placed the Ark of the Covenant in the Jordan River, and the waters parted, and the Israelites passed over on dry land until they reached the city of Jericho. To further prepare for the mission that lay ahead, the priests armed themselves with 7 trumpets made out of the horns of rams. Joshua further gave the Israelites instructions to prepare to march around the city and to shout, but not until he said so. They had waited, they were prepared, and now they were set to move when Joshua perceived or felt that, knowing in his spirit by listening to the voice of God, that the time was right. And when Joshua perceived that it was time, the Israelites marched, and the trumpets blew, and the walls of Jericho came crashing down. Their patience, preparation, and perception paid off. This was their opportunity to start a new life in their own land. Joshua and his army would go on to fight many more battles and secure many more victories and many more lands, but they still all required the same formula: patience, perception, and preparation. Let's travel up to the book of 1 Samuel and visit with another warrior named David. Chapter 17:38 finds David getting ready to face one of the biggest challenges of his life, literally. His adversary was a giant of a man named Goliath. Goliath stood over 9 feet tall and wore a coat of armor that weighed 125 pounds and carried a 15-pound spear. David had his work cut out for him, yet he rose to the challenge. The big bully of a giant was shouting off his mouth to David, calling him names, and ridiculing him, trying to provoke him. All the while, David was patiently waiting for him to finish talking, using this time to get in position to make his move. David had already prepared himself for battle. Before he had even met Goliath, he had killed a lion and a bear, defending his father's sheep. Also, before this battle with Goliath, he had refused to use King Saul's armor to fight in, choosing instead to use what he was accustomed to, his own clothes. As he headed out to face Goliath, David further prepared himself by stopping by a brook and choosing 5 smooth stones and putting them into his shepherd bag. Then he drew near the giant by walking up on him face to legs. No doubt David couldn't even see Goliath face to face. Yet we can almost hear the swish of that slingshot as David started to run toward Goliath. And when David perceived that the distance and the speed was just right, he let loose that rock out of that sling, and down went the giant, smack, in the middle of his forehead. No doubt this was equivalent to being shot by a rifle today, and Goliath never knew what hit him. This was David's opportunity to prove himself, and with patience, preparation, and perception, he did just that. Read all about David's action-packed life in the book of 1 Samuel. Don't worry, ladies, we have a shero for you, and she didn't even have to go to battle like Joshua and David. No, she used her brains and her beauty to take the opportunity to bring her enemy down. Her name is Esther, and she has her very own book in the Bible. That's where you will find her story in length. However, for time's sake, here's the short version. King Ahasuerus was displeased because during a party he was giving, his queen, Vashti, refused to come out and be paraded in front of his drunken guests. This made the king so mad that after consulting with his wise men, he decided to dethrone Queen Vashti. As time went on, he began to regret his actions and wanted her back. In those days, when a decree was issued, it was final. Not even the king himself could change it. So it was impossible to get Vashti back. Therefore, his servants saw how lonely he was and counseled him to get a replacement to keep him company. And if she pleased the king, she would then become the queen. In comes Esther to the story. Esther was brought to the palace to prepare for presentation to the king. And boys, Esther was a knockout. J-Lo who? She was fine. She was all that glitter. She was platinum. A 10. Esther had an uncle living in the king's court. He was a Jewish captive, but he had warned Esther to keep that close. Don't tell it or the fact that she too was a Jew. Mordecai had also created an enemy among the people living in the palace by the name of Haman. Haman got ticked off at Mordecai because Mordecai would not bow down to him when he walked by. He had received a little honor from the king, and the power went to his head, making him think that he was all that. Well, when Mordecai would not bow, it struck off rage in him, and he vowed to kill every Jew in the kingdom. Mordecai learns of Haman's evil plan and enlists the help of Esther to save him and all of the Jews. Esther by now had received favor from the king, and she is the queen. Yet she still kept her nationality a secret, but now it was time to come clean. Under the advice and instructions from her uncle Mordecai, Esther prepares to save her people from the murderous plot of Haman. She instructs her people to fast by way of preparation. and she also fasts along with her maids. To fast means to go without food. She gathered her courage and prepares to go before the king to petition his assistance in saving her people. Esther is also preparing to set Haman up by playing up to his inflated ego. She patiently works her plan by going before the king, but she doesn't get right to the point of her visit. No, she's too smart for that. She doesn't want to rush the plan. First, she invites the king, who is her husband, to a banquet she had prepared. And looking into her beautiful face, how could he refuse? Esther also invites the wicked Haman along. After 2 additional banquets, Queen Esther perceives that this is the right time to expose Haman, and that's just what she did. She told her husband about his plot, and the king handled his business. Haman was promptly put to death, and the Jews had an opportunity to vindicate and defend themselves against persecution. And all because Esther had used her beauty and her brains, along with patience, perception, and preparation to take out the enemy. Now let's travel on up to the New Testament book of Matthew, and there in chapter 9, verses 20 through 22, we will find a woman who sees the opportunity to be healed using the same formula of the 3 P's. This lady has been sick for 12 long years. She suffered from a bleeding disorder. She had spent all her money going from one doctor to another, yet none of them had found a cure. One day Jesus was passing on the same street or road that she was on. By now many people had heard of Jesus' power to heal, and she was no exception. Opportunity was knocking. Today could be her day of healing. She made up in her mind to go for it. She prepared for the worst. You see, she wasn't supposed to be in public. Back then it was illegal to be in public places like the streets of Jerusalem or at the marketplace if you were menstrual or bleeding. Yet she patiently pressed on. Closer and closer she drew towards him until she was close enough to touch him. And she perceived within her heart that if she could just touch a little bit of his clothes, she would get well. And that's exactly what she did. She seized the opportunity and was rewarded with renewed health. Let's move on up to the book of Mark, chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, and catch up with Jesus in the city of Capernaum. Here we find another one in need of healing. He has palsy. He is also blessed to have 4 friends that was determined to see him healed. He had also heard of the healing power of Jesus, and they waited patiently to put their sick friend on a stretcher and carried him to the place where Jesus was preaching. Once they got there, they couldn't get close because of the crowd, but they still was determined that Jesus healed their friend. They prepared for action. When they couldn't get through the crowd, they climbed up on the roof of the house that Jesus was preaching in. They cut a hole, and when they were done, they lowered their friend down in front of Jesus. They had perceived this was the right time for a miracle, and that is exactly what happened. When Jesus saw their patience in helping their friend, their crude but effective preparations, and their perception in knowing that he admired faith, he healed the man of his crippling disease. Another opportunity had been seized here. What opportunity are waiting for you guys? Perhaps you are planning for college. Now is the time to prepare yourself with study and making good grades, checking out scholarships and grants that may be available. While you are waiting to go to college, be patient. Don't rush through your days trying to be grown before your time. Enjoy these years responsibly. Listen to your parents and guidance counselors, and when the time is right to go forward, you will perceive the best course to take. You will know what school is best for you. You will know whether or not to go away or stay home, and what career choice to take. You will know these things because you have been waiting to seize your opportunity. Perhaps you are being called into the ministry. You all would be surprised at how many people your age having the opportunity knocking for them to develop their gifts in this area. Don't be fearful. Let the opportunity come to you, and it will knock. If you know God is calling you out, now is the time to prepare yourself. Study your Bibles or go to a Bible study. Go to a regularly scheduled worship service. Ask your pastors or deacons for appropriate study material. And above all, be patient. It takes time to develop in ministry. Years in most cases. Even Jesus waited 33 years. You will perceive when the time is right to go forward in this area. God had promised in His Word in John 10 and 16 that His sheep will hear His voice. Just be preparing, be patient, and be listening for your opportunity. Lastly, you could be a young person desiring to settle down to a home and family. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Yet the same formula applies. You must be patient and wait for the right person to come along. God will send them. Don't be quick to rush into relationships. Platonic relationships is a good way to weed out the unqualified applicants. Get to know one another as people, not as objects or scoreboards. This is not cool and is ungodly. You also must be prepared for this life. Get a job that is sufficient to meet your needs. Decide before marriage what lifestyle you expect to live. Keep your credit in good shape by avoiding charge cards and unnecessary spending. And when the time is right, you too will perceive that it is time to make your move. The most important thing to remember is this: listen to the knocking. Don't sit back and just expect your life will fall into place by chance. It just won't happen. Don't let opportunity pass you by. Many times we only get one crack at it. After you have waited and watched and prepared, be like our characters in the story. Seize the moment of victory. We hope that this has taught you something and hope that it is valuable to you as a lesson. And just know this, that opportunity probably comes by us more than we think it does. Keep your eyes out for opportunity. And whatever you want to achieve, there is an opportunity for you. And I hope that you will hear His knocking. Thank you for tuning into Generational Ministries and listen for the next short story. Have a great day.